Leeds, Leeds, Leeds. What is happening? Welcome to Working Hours, an oral history podcast about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. Working Hours wants to record 1,000 loiners over the course of this, the most important decade in the history of the human species, and ask them about what they do all day and hear how they feel about it. My name is Simon, and this is all my fault. My mission here is to try to map out what my city, Leeds, a city that has declared a climate emergency, did during humanity's biggest emergency. On Working Hours, we hear how loiners have, are, and will be coping with our multiple and expanding crises during their day-to-day working hours. Can we turn things around? We'll find out. To tell this story, I need loiners like you, dear listener. I need people in Leeds or people from Leeds to come on this podcast and just tell me what they do all day and let me record how this affects us. Thank you for listening. What did you want to be when you grew up?
So when I was growing up, I actually did want to do something creative. I remember being quite young and being interested in architecture and potentially, planning, the room planning and all that kind of stuff. So I remember being quite young and getting one of those actual little architecture boards with all the measurements on it and the protractors and everything like that. So I'd always been quite creative, I guess. But I realised when I was a little bit older that that was going to be hard to get into. Not only is it a tough industry, but the amount of studying and all that kind of stuff that you need to do. And I think I actually got a little bit bored of the concept. So I was like, it's all very black and white, very not plain Jane, but it's a very structured discipline to be in. So I actually wanted to do something creative and something design related when I was quite young, I think. So I remember when I was at school, there was obviously no courses in web design or courses in brand or graphic design. And so IT was very much a class about using Excel spreadsheets and using PowerPoint and things like that. And I remember actually asking my teacher if I could design the school's website instead of learning about Excel. And thankfully, that teacher let me do that. And I think that's credit to that person for letting me do something a little bit different. So I was using some really old software back then called Microsoft Front Page, which was part of the Microsoft library. Yeah, classic. And just starting to dabble with Photoshop and code and things like that, and just learning it off of my own back. So yeah, I guess I've always kind of wanted to do what I do now, which I'm quite lucky about, really.
So I'm going to go back to the architecture. Were there any particular styles or periods or anything that you were really into? Like what were you or any particular architects that you were like, oh, I'm all about this particular architect and their work?
Yeah, I definitely wasn't into particular architects, but I do kind of like Art Deco style buildings and things like that. So I was really into that style, which I think we've really lost over time, which is a shame. So I had a real kind of a love for all of that kind of style. But I felt very much like where you start and where you really need to grow is basically in that top down planning of the actual measurements and everything like that. And it just wasn't for me. I'm not very good at maths for a start, so it wasn't a particularly great skill set for me to have. And I think having something on screen that could react quite quickly to what I was thinking and doing quickly became, rather than on paper and very much graph, being on screen was a cool kind of switch in my mind for what I wanted to do, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. The sort of that instant feedback of changing something. If you're drafting something in paper, yeah, you can change it however you want.
Yeah.
But it's not the same as when you tweak a CAD design where it'll change the whole thing instantly and
Yeah, exactly.
You're listening to Series 5, Episode 38, and to my guest, Colin Grist. This is another Squadcast interview recorded on the 4th of September 2024. Hello, listener. Colin Grist is the owner, co-founder, and the creative director at Few and Far. Few and Far help charities make the world a better place. Proud to work only with charities and do-good organisations in bringing their experience and expertise in digital to a sector in real need of support. Colin worked for almost 15 years in digital across design and development, creating award-winning work for organisations such as WaterAid, the Bank of England, Blue Cross and Mind. Colin speaks openly about his own mental health experiences, both as a founder but also as a creative person. And he set up a platform called Pressures and Perspectives to help break the stigma around mental health in the creative industry. Recently, Colin became a trustee at Leeds Mind, and he is also a qualified gym instructor and dance instructor, providing dance classes to the local community for over 3 years. Right, let's do this. Episode 148 of Working Hours with Colin Grist. Let's jump straight into what you're doing now then.
Yeah, sure. So I'm co-founder and creative director at a digital marketing agency called Few and Far, and we only work with charities and do good causes. We've been running since 2018, and I manage all of our like creative output, designers on the team, but also our own marketing, anything that's basically the design output of what we do. I kind of have my hand on, and yeah, that's basically culminated in a team of 4 at the moment. And how we started was I actually used to work in agencies doing design for many different clients in Leeds, but also national, international as well, creative campaigns, brand work, websites, and got really good at it. But when I was getting a little bit older, I started to think that I was a bit like unfulfilled. So to try and combat that, I thought, well, I'll go freelance and try and see a bit more of the city and meet a few different agencies and do some more creative work with other people. And that was really good. I did that for around 2 years. However, I found then I was becoming a bit lonely and a little bit isolated. And I was the person that was kind of given the work effectively that either they'd taken on and there was too much, or it was the work that no one else wanted to do or couldn't do. And so it became this feeling of I'm just doing what I was doing before, but now I'm just doing it with people I don't know as well. And the money
Yeah.
was great, but the sort of experience was had its good points, but for me, it wasn't quite what I was looking for. Um, and so from very young, even when I was mentioning about, designing websites and all that kind of stuff, I'd always had this idea of like, I'd like to have my own business doing that, my own agency effectively. And so I just decided one day to kind of think about who was kind of a yin to my yang when it comes to what we did and who could complement my skills but also elevate what we do. And that was Tom, who I used to actually work with at the agency before I went freelance. We met there, we got on really well, and we worked at a huge company there, like 300 plus. And you actually found that it was only us two that were doing quite a lot of like the work. So there was obviously a really good studio, but when work actually it came to a team, there was only 2 or 3 of you actually doing the work together. So I always knew that it was quite powerful to have good people in a small group doing really good things. And so one day I just asked him, "Do you want to go for a beer?" And I'd got this idea, and he was like, "Yeah, sure, we'll go for a pint." And that night, I thought I should probably come with some prep, some form of like thing to talk about. And so that night, I think I made about 150, 160 slides, which I'd not planned on doing at all, but it was all like, this is what I envision, this is what I'd like to do, this is the type of work I could see us doing, all this kind of stuff. And so he turned up unawares, just blindsided by not only a pint but this huge presentation, which was I think a bit much for him at the time. And after I'd gone through it all, he actually said no, which was like, oh, okay, fair enough. And for me, it was like back to the drawing board because I knew in my mind I was like, I'll find someone who I can work with.
Didn't
And then
occur
about
to you that you just kind of overwhelmed him and he was kind of like, oh, hang on.
Yeah, well, I don't think it was that, but I think he was he really liked where he worked. Like he was happy where he was. He was being paid well, and I think he was really excited about a project that was up and coming for him at work. And for me, I was past that. I was past where
Yeah.
one project or one thing was going to keep me somewhere. I wanted to think bigger picture. And I think all it was in his mind, he was like, "Well, I'm happy. I'd love to do that with Cole, but I'm
It's a
happy. I've got this
risk.
cool project. It's a risk, yeah."
Mm.
And so he said no. And then I think about a day later, um, he got back in touch with me, and the project he was going to work on fell through,
Mm.
which for me was great because he sort of said, "Okay, I'm on board now." And I think it's been really interesting to reflect on that now that we've made this a success over these years, where him focusing on almost the smaller picture in a way rather than the bigger
Mhm.
picture of like where he could go almost meant he wasn't going to be part of it. So that's quite interesting for us to now look back on and go, I'm so glad that project fell through for you because, we wouldn't be doing this now. And yeah, so from there on, I started kind of transferring my like freelance clients into agency clients.
Mhm.
Some fell along the way. Some stayed with us, and this was all while Tom was sort of transitioning from his like notice period and leaving where he was to going full time with me.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, since then we've managed through like the pandemic and all of that kind of stuff. I'm sure we're going to get onto that anyway,
Mhm.
but yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell of where we're at with Few and Far.
Mm. So, um, next question is, how did you get into it? So, we've mentioned Tom, and he's also been on the show before.
Mhm.
I should have remembered to look up what episode number. I have reached the point where there are too many episodes for me to
Yeah,
remember things, and I've
loading
like
into one.
start. Yep, it's all turning into one thing. But yeah, I will put that in the show notes and so on. So we've covered some of this, but some of that was a bit ago. I'd like to. So I want to go from, say, you designing the school website to kind of
Yeah.
maybe the agency work. Did you go into education and training? Did you do a degree in a particular field? Did you know how you were going to steer into that? Like, did you drift, or did you have a course set, I
Yeah,
guess?
sure. So after high school, I actually went into sixth form and did the whole. I did business and IT,
Hmm.
business studies, and I think that was quite good for kind of changing my mindset about like what to look out for in the world and all of that kind of stuff. But I didn't go to university or college. I kind of didn't get good grades, to be honest, at school. I was kind of like an A grade student all the way through, especially in like art and graphics and things like that.
Hmm.
But when it came to the big day, the GCSEs, I just absolutely crumbled, and didn't get
Nerves.
particularly good nerves. Yeah,
Hmm.
feeling I was underprepared, even though I had prepared, and I just. I remember on the day, I still remember it now, some of those where you're in the big hall and you're on your own, and I just had meltdowns about like what I was supposed
It's
to do.
it's loads of pressure. They put loads of pressure on you for it as
It's
well,
super
and they're like, "This is
intense.
really, really important," and you're
Yeah,
making these decisions for the rest of your life, and it's like you
yeah.
can sit them again.
Yeah, I know, yeah. At the time, you just feel like it's do or die, and I died that day, so,
Yeah.
yeah, that was really tough, and that's why I went into sixth form because I was like, I do need to obviously come away with something, but what I started doing then was trying to freelance and trying to
Hmm.
learn on the like, in my spare time, so, hitting about 17, I think it was 18, I started wanting to learn how to drive. So driving lessons. So I did a service swap with my driving instructor, did them a website, which was great, all this kind of like little bits and pieces, but they
Hmm.
were very, very small bits and pieces. And I was struggling to kind of see, this isn't gonna pay my way, like really what I'm doing, like these little bits and these service swaps and things like that.
Mm.
So I got a job. I was working in a DIY store, quite a well known one. I don't know if we can use brands on here. And
Everyone. I mean, it's all free advertising for them as well, isn't it?
yeah,
Not
well,
to let them
I
off.
started working at B&Q just for money,
Mm.
and worked there part time initially, and then I started working there full time, and I started working nights, and I started working in the garden centre, and that was quite nice. Like
Mm.
just watering plants all day and putting up Christmas trees at Christmas and all that kind of stuff. It was quite nice, and I think for maybe a year or two, I was kind of drifting. I didn't really know. I was still on a night, working away, working on kind of GeoCities and Front Page and Dreamweaver, and trying to learn about code, trying to learn more about Photoshop and how to design things. And that was really where my enjoyment came. And then the day job was just the day job to,
Hmm.
to have money to kind of live. And then out of the blue, I got, I think, messaged on Indeed, of all places, the old recruitment site,
Mm.
which is still going, I think, as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Asking if I'd go in for a chat with a company, a software company, and they were literally around the corner from where I lived. So I was like, "What's going on here? Like, this is crazy." And went in, and they kind of offered me a job there and then. I had a portfolio that I took, and I think they were quite impressed by that. And it was literally a portfolio of these like service swap style clients,
Hmm.
um, and all of that kind of stuff. And they were impressed with it. And that was kind of how I got my big break. As I mentioned before, that I was probably kind of drifting with the B&Q stuff, but I had an opportunity actually, which is probably, I probably need to go back to this actually, but I was working for a fashion designer, and the fashion designer knew someone I worked with at B&Q.
Mm.
So, and he said, I know you're really good at whatever it is that you do online. You're sort of like one of these like computer wizards.
Mm.
Um, this designer I know is looking for someone to manage their like online store and like orders and things like that. And I
Mm.
was like, "Oh my god, like amazing! Like what a kind of foot in the door to
Yeah.
actually be doing this in a paid capacity." And so they were actually based in Leeds. They had a store in Leeds, which was near kind of where Brownhill is and stuff now, in the at the back of what's the big store called? Anyway, we'll move on from that. But I worked there for a little bit, and I was doing their online store and all of this kind of stuff, and working at B&Q. So I had these two jobs, and then I
Mm.
got this offer from this agency, and I was like, I need to go to see them, and
Mm.
got offered this role. And it was really low paid, but it was just enough to make me go, well, I could get rid of both jobs and have the one job, and it's a little bit less, but it's what I
You're doing
want.
more of what you want to do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the foot in the door.
Mm.
And so I accepted the role. I was absolutely buzzing with it,
Mm.
and went to see this designer, and they were like, "You're absolutely not leaving. You've got to give us like 3 months notice." All of this kind of stuff. Um, and I actually didn't have a contract. I think it was just them like taking it
Hmm.
personally.
Hmm.
So I remember driving into Leeds in my little car. I was like 19 or something, 20, and posting my notice through the letterbox, and just going like, "That's me.
No.
That's me done.
Yeah.
That's me done. I'm definitely not going to turn this role down for you, like, because you
Yeah.
need me." Um, and that's how I got my break. Really, I was very very lucky. I think my portfolio, and this is why I always talk about people like working on their portfolio in their own time, because
Mm.
I didn't have a degree. I didn't have all of this education. I just did it in my own time, and I think that actually, at the end of the day, is probably what got me the job. It was like I was able to go in there, talk about what I've done, what I can do, what software I can use, and here's some examples of stuff that I've got.
Mm.
And I was offered this role, and I ended up working there for about 2 years. And so I
Hmm.
learned. It felt very much like I knew what I was doing, but when I was in that working environment, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Really, it was like I felt out of my depth instantly. And I remember going home the first sort of day or two and just thinking, I'm not who I thought I was. I am not cut out for this.
Hmm.
But I stuck with it. I stuck with it. A lot of the code was way more complicated, than I'd learned in my own time.
Hmm.
Um, but I think for them, it helped them long term because they were small as well, and I was
Hmm.
almost hybrid before hybrid was a thing. So I
Hmm.
think it was very beneficial to them, um, and for me, obviously getting on the ladder.
Hmm.
Um, Worked there a couple of years. And then one of our clients was a very large car rental firm that used to be based in Leeds, actually on Kirkstall Road. They were called One Car One,
Mm.
and so you could always get cars hired and vans hired from there. And they were a big client of ours. And one day, I walked in and was told, we've effectively sold the design and development department, which was me and somebody else, to the
Hmm.
client. So the client had obviously been going, look, we've been giving you money for years. It's, we want to bring it in house now, and we want to
Hmm.
bring the people who are actually working on it in house. And we were like, what? Like, this is, you can't do that, can you? This is insane.
Yeah, my contract is with you. You can't sell that
Yeah,
on.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But for me and the other guy who were sort of in that predicament, I mean, it felt like we had no choice, and I think we did. But the choice would have
Mm.
been, you need to go get yourself another job, and I don't think either of us were confident enough to go.
Or lawyer up, but then it's
Yeah,
whether you've got the money for that. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Or we didn't. I didn't think either of us thought, screw this, we're off.
Mm.
Um, and to be fair, not only had he got us better jobs effectively, and
Mm.
maybe probably got himself out of a financial predicament where maybe we would have had to been let go at some point anyway,
Yeah.
but he'd also guaranteed us higher salaries.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he'd done that by going, they're on this much and we actually weren't, but he'd done us a favor in saying, look, they're on this much and whatever. So that made it a little bit of an easier pill to swallow. And it was like, well, it's a client we know. Okay, it'll be in house. We're only going to work on one thing, but it's more money,
Hmm.
more of an opportunity. We're the first ones in the door doing this,
Hmm.
and it could be a good experience. So with
Yeah.
my
It's
friend
like
agreeing,
all good news, but it's nice to be asked, isn't it? It's like,
yeah, yeah,
well, you know.
yeah, exactly. So me and my friend agreed. Okay, well, if you do it, I'll do it, kind of thing. Because like
Hmm.
without one of us doing it, I don't know what they'd have even done. To be fair, but we did it, and we worked there for, I want to say, about 2 years as well.
Mm.
And it was great. We did a new website for them. We updated their brand. We were doing all of like these cool back end systems, making newsletters, making them like from top to bottom look better and work better
Hmm.
online. And then one day we all got pulled into the office, and this was a lot of staff. This was probably 100 people, maybe more.
Mm.
And we were told that the business had gone under. And so we were all instantly made redundant there and then, which was very surreal, being in a room with everyone you'd ever worked with there and just
Mm.
saying, like, pack your stuff up. Um, it's over,
Mm.
which was absolutely bonkers because that was literally as we got a house. So we just got our house. It had all been approved. We'd paid, I think, our first month mortgage. It was all fine, and then the second month we got this news, and we missed our mortgage payment, which is a nightmare. I think we had that on
Mm.
our, like, a black mark on our name for about 10 years after that, just for missing
Mm.
one payment, and that was devastating. That was absolutely devastating, and I didn't know then what I was going to do. I really didn't
Mm.
know, like, where to turn. Um, and I actually got offered a role fairly swiftly from. They were kind of like the search company that worked with the car rental company where I work. So they
Mhm.
were actually in another part of the building, and because they were their own agency, they were separate. We kind of got a bit of a rapport with them over the years, and obviously we worked together with us doing the website and brand, and them doing the SEO and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. And they were in a position of thinking, well, we actually want to branch out and do more design work as well and development work.
Mhm.
And so they offered me a role, and it was only, I think it was only when I started there I realized that the people who just made me redundant actually had a stake in this agency that I'd gone to work at now.
Mhm.
So I was like, well, I don't have any other offers.
Mm.
And yes, they've made me redundant, but I actually felt sorry for them for, they'd run this business for years and years, his car rental company. Uh,
Mhm.
his dad had run it, and then the son had run it. And from everything that we gathered, it was because the bank wouldn't give them a loan to get another fleet of cars. So it was,
Was it? Yeah. Was it like Credit Crunch related? Was it around
I
then, or
think
was
it
it?
was, yeah,
Yeah.
I think it may have been. And it was just like, obviously they were reliant on always having a modern fleet that people could hire.
Yeah.
And when
And
it was,
and having that credit overflow of like the
yeah,
money,
yeah.
being able to turn over. Yeah.
Yeah, and so when it was just like we've been told no, it was like the whole business just crumbled. So I
Yeah.
kind of always felt like it wasn't them, it was it was circumstance or whatever. So
Hmm.
started at this place and found out, oh, okay, they're part of it, but they're sort of more like silent partners in it, really. And had a great boss there, great little team. Uh, Actually met my best friend when I worked there as well, who ended up being like best man at my wedding and all this kind of stuff. So really little team, 4 or 5 of us, maybe 6 at one point, but just a really cool little team doing some little bits of work. And I was probably there 6 months, I want to say, and the
Hmm.
same thing happened again.
Mm.
They let us all go and said this isn't working out either, and made us all redundant. So I got made redundant twice
That's incredible. Like,
by the
and
same
that way again,
that way
all in the
again.
room, just like
Yeah,
that has never. I've been fired. I've walked out of jobs. I've been in things that have been taken over. Like all sorts of experiences. I have never had that experience once, and you've had it twice.
I had it twice and in fairly quick succession, and by the same people. So
God.
yeah, fairly incredible. It was absolutely devastating as well to see, because the people who'd started the agency, who were my boss, they were just guys like myself. They just
Mm.
started this thing out of a passion for doing it and done a really good job of it. And along the way, had obviously been given a bit of investment and like a stake in the business. And
Mm.
then yeah, I think it just went south for them. And I know he's since completely got out of the industry as my boss, and he's a teacher now, and he's doing really good things in that. But I
Mm.
think after that, he almost just fell out of love with the whole discipline and the industry.
It's
And I
That's a
get it.
really harsh experience. I mean, like to happen, like I say, once is kind of. I mean, you're left not knowing what's going on, but again, it's like
Yeah,
often they say it's not what you know, it's who you know. But in this circumstance, it's the work. It sounds to me it's
yeah,
the work that, and your relationship with other people while doing the work.
yeah,
It's like he's good, we'll
yeah,
get him.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you've got that fallback.
Definitely, yeah. So after that, I remember very, very vividly that my best mate, and our other friend went up to his flat, and we were just sat in the room, just looking at each other, going like, "What do we do now?"
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I've got to tell Fern, who's my wife now, again, like, I'm sorry, like again, but I
Yeah.
remember ringing her, and she's like, "How come you're at home?" And I'm like, "I've lost my job again," like for the
It's
same
like, what are
thing.
you doing? It's
Yeah.
like, nothing. It's not me.
Yeah, I remember going home and just washing the car. I don't think I've ever washed the car ever, before or since. But I remember going home and going, "I've got to do something with my time," and my car looks pretty dirty. And just having just this like meltdown of like, I'm just gonna like wash my car for a bit.
Was it an absent-minded wash, or was it like the most thorough wash
It
ever?
was fairly thorough, yeah. And I was out there way longer than like, the water was cold. I remember, and everything, like this dead weird experience. But so yeah, we sort of, yeah, we didn't know what to do for a little bit. And my best friend, he went
Mm.
and worked. He got a job somewhere else quite quickly because he was really talented and had all
Mm.
the qualifications and everything. Um, and I actually, it was the first time I really had to like, right, I've got to go out now and like apply and look for a role, because obviously the first one I kind of looked out with, and they brought me in for a chat, and effectively that was the only job I'd ever had to interview for, because I'd been I'd been bought to work in house, and then I'd
Mhm.
basically sidestepped to the agency that was where I was as well, so they knew me already. So it's very casual in this sort of, never really having to have this like serious interview experience.
Mhm.
Um, and I remember applying for loads of jobs, and eBuyer actually got in touch with me, who over in Hull. They got a huge warehouse there, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's amazing!" Like, so I went for the interview there, was offered the job, and I turned it down because I was like, "It's so far away." It took me about an hour and a half.
Yeah, I was going to say, would you have to have moved, or were they expecting a commute? I mean, you could do some remotely, but
Yeah,
I'm guessing at that point that's less acceptable to people still.
yeah, yeah. Well, I was like, we couldn't move. We'd obviously between buying the house and this whole stuff happening, it
Mm.
was not even that long really, but it was. I'll have to just commute and see how it goes.
Yeah.
And I did it for about. I think I turned it down. Did I turn it down? And then I can't remember what I did now. Um,
Or was it one of those where you took it because you needed to pay the mortgage and then you were kind of looking for something else?
That is what I did. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 I took it and I was like, well, I don't have another choice. And it's a great job, to be fair. Like, be working on really good projects, a new computer, all this kind of stuff. Being
Great, great company to be
part of
part
a bigger
of, and yeah,
team, big
yeah,
team. Yeah, and they have another company called Wren Kitchens, which is massive now. So they're
yeah,
part of
yeah.
eBuyer. So I would be working on the Wren Kitchens website and all that kind of stuff. So I took it, and the team were lovely. And after even a week, I was like, I can't even afford to drive here for this because
Mm,
like it was costing me a fortune in petrol.
hmm
Very very far, very very long days, and I felt so bad because they'd taken a chance on me,
mm,
and I was like, I think they'd even said in the interview, "You are perfect for what we want. It's just the distance. You all right with that?" I was like,
mm.
"Yeah, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. I'll be all right." And because I needed the job. Um, and it just didn't work out. And I'd literally just started there, and I'd been sent an email from a different agency in Leeds. And how I'd come to work with them was when I was at the last place I worked where I got made redundant. We'd done a bit of outsourced work for this agency, so they'd designed this like really great website, and they'd had nobody internally to build it. Like they were at capacity, and so I built it, and I think it had resonated with them. They thought I'd done a really good job, and so when it came to them looking for another developer to join the team, they just sort of sent me an email going, "Hey, like, what's up?" So I went in for that as I was commuting back and forth from Hull, and absolutely blew the interview. It was so bad. Like the technical questions, I was just like, I think it was nerves.
Yeah.
So I knew the answers, but it was just like when I was in the room, and it was in this big agency, and it had like the glass office, and you could see the team out there and all that. Like,
It's
I
been
think,
put on the spot as well, and like you say, you haven't really had to do that experience, and the
yeah,
pressure's there, and it's like,
yeah,
it's back to being in the exams, isn't it? It's like,
it
oh no, I have to
is.
do this.
Yeah,
The pressure's on.
I'd had the chats, I'd had the coffees, but not the like. Right, there's some technical questions I'm going to hit you with right now, and
Yeah.
it was like GCSEs all over again. So I remember coming out going, "Well, there's absolutely no way I've got that.
Mm,
Like, I wouldn't give me that. There's no
mm,
chance." And they offered me it, and I think they offered me it because I'm really glad. But I think they knew I knew the answers, but they knew that
yeah.
I'd just nerves had got to me or
Yeah,
whatever.
they could just tell. They were like, he
Yeah,
knows.
yeah, and the fact that I'd worked and built a project for them was probably all
Yeah,
they needed, really.
exactly. Because the
Yeah,
work, again, the work's there to see.
yeah, yeah. So I took that, and I had to tell eBuyer fairly swiftly, I'm really sorry. It's like
Mm.
it's a long way, and they were like, I told you it would be. And I was like, you did, but
Well,
at the
you give it
time,
a shot.
yeah, it was sod's law that I'd taken that, and then they'd reached out, this agency in Leeds, and it was like, I wish they'd have emailed me even a day before or 2 days
Yeah,
before. It'd have made the big
yeah.
difference. So I took that role. They're called Made by Pie. They're actually still going. They're up at towards Roundhay in Leeds,
Mm,
and they had amazing clients. They had Disney as
mm,
one of their big clients. First Direct, who were obviously the big bank in Leeds as well. And I loved it there. That was like my first. I'd say that's my first proper agency job where it's actually got like proper structure, large
mm,
team, great clients. Couldn't believe my luck, really.
mm,
And I worked there for about 3 years. I made my way up through the team there. But what I realized was along the way, if you remember, I mentioned at the start, I was doing both. I was doing design and the code, the development as well. So I was like a hybrid person.
mm.
But by getting this job at Made by Pi, the industry had moved on a little bit, and people were starting to become like not pigeonhole, but it was like you are either a developer or you are a designer.
Yeah,
And
more distinction, more specialization.
yeah,
Because
and we
there's more to do as well because the technology's advanced. So it's like
yeah,
you there's so much more to know.
absolutely, yeah. And it's funny that more recently it's come full circle. There's a lot of memes out there now. If you look at a job description for like a designer or a developer, you have to know all of it anyway. You've got to learn like how to be a
Mm,
designer, and you need to be able to do brand, but you also need to do a back end system of a website and all this kind of stuff. But I was doing all of that back then, and I found that the more success I was getting in this agency, the more I was going up the ladder, but I was going up the development ladder. So I ended up managing the team of developers there. I
hmm
think it was senior developer or head of development or something that I had. And it was great. I learned a lot about how to manage people there, how to manage expectations from like project managers, how to look after the staff that I work with, all of that kind of stuff.
are you getting support from the organizations this whole time? Are that is like most of them, sort of supporting you, giving you development, or are you driving all this yourself? Are you like
I'd
out
say
of hours researching,
Yeah,
trying things
I'd say
out?
a bit of both. I think it was I had the support. They gave me that opportunity to lead that team because I think
Hmm.
they saw value in they wanted me to stay. They saw value in me being like one of the more approachable and chatty members of the team, and I could speak to the. I think because I'd learned it all myself, I could speak to people who weren't technical, so project
Yeah.
managers, account handlers, in a way that like just made it very easy for them to understand. Whereas I'm sure even from your conversation with Tom, the ability to be able to speak in a technical way to someone who isn't technical is like a skill. It's a real
Hmm.
like art, a dark art, effectively. And I think that was why. So they supported me, but I did want to thrive at it and be
Hmm.
good at it.
Hmm.
So yeah, I used to do a lot in my own time, a lot of learning, and yeah, I worked there as I said for 3+ years, I think it was, and then I got offered a role where my best friend, who had sort of moved on and done his own thing, and he had a designer and front end job come up at where he worked, which was in the centre of Leeds, um, and I applied for it, and it was a lot more money, and I took it,
Hmm.
and I wasn't particularly unhappy where I was. It was just like, well, it'll be cool to hang out with my mate again, and it's in the centre of Leeds because round here were a bit out of the way for me,
Hmm.
and I took it. And it was actually I got offered the role in the development team, so it was like, oh, okay, so it's not the
Hmm.
design role, it's the development role. So it's sort of what I'm doing now.
Hmm.
And I went there, and I think within about a day, I thought I hate it. I hate it here. It's just not. I got that instant vibe of just like,
Yep.
what have I done? I
Yep.
felt really bad. Um, and I think I'd moved for all the wrong reasons. I'd moved for the money, for to be with a mate, and not
Yep.
for actually anything really like
What the
for
role was, and yeah,
yeah,
what it's about. Yeah.
yeah. And the work was boring, the clients were boring, and I was like, I don't really the team. I didn't really like gel with the team, and it was
Mm.
massive as well. It was huge. So I'd gone from an agency where there was maybe 30 of us in the studio to this agency where the whole agency was on one floor, and it was like 150 people or something like that, and they were all doing different things,
Hmm.
and I was just like, oh no, I've made a bad decision here. Um, And again, thankfully, so I was like, right, okay, this isn't for me, but I can't go back. Like they always say, never go back to where you were before. So I was like, well, what am I going to do now? And I was approached by an agency where a friend of mine from where I'd worked previously moved to, and he'd moved
Hmm.
there from. He was a junior designer at this agency I was at. Never felt like he really got the opportunity and the chance to grow, and left. And by the time he'd reached out to me, he was like head of design there, so he'd thrive
Mm.
massively in a different environment. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And the one reason it made me jump was they said you'll come in as a developer, but we will give you design opportunities. And because this was coming from the lad I worked with before, and he was the head of that department, I was like, well, that's a
Hmm.
guarantee if I've ever seen one.
Hmm.
And so I moved to Numico, and Numico are still going. They do amazing work with charities, with education boards, things like that.
Hmm.
And I started there. So I started there as a developer. I worked there for about a year as a developer, and then I actually fully switched roles to be a designer. I took a bit of a side step, almost a down step,
Hmm.
because I wanted to get back to doing design. I felt like I'd been pigeonholed for too long just doing coding, and
Hmm.
was really looking again to get into like a more creative outlet.
Hmm.
And they gave me that chance, which is something I'm forever appreciative of. And that's really where my love of working on charitable causes started.
Hmm.
Because up until that point, I'd obviously worked in house, I'd worked on commercial clients, I worked on any and all things, and some cool stuff that I was really proud of along the way. Like I'd built the Winnie the Pooh website for Disney at one point in my
Nice.
career. But it's all like, oh, it's well cool. But like, it was at Numico where I learned about this stuff's actually making a real difference. Like, this is
Hmm.
actually we've made a website here, for example, for WaterAid, and this is taking donations that are going to help kids like who don't have water.
Live.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like I've never felt a bigger motivation to do what I do than when I was there. And yeah, love my time there. Love my time there. I just felt at the end I was restricted creatively, really,
Mhm.
and got headhunted by a larger agency, which was my last ever agency, which is where I met Tom.
Mm.
Um, and that was a better opportunity. It got to do really creative projects, creative storytelling projects, award winning design, all of that kind of stuff, and that was great for the like. I got proper creative outlet there, but
Mhm.
it wasn't working on good causes. And I think so. When I left, then I went freelance, and then Few and Far became a thing. I always had in the back of my head, I'd really like to be getting back to that feeling I once had of working on, good stuff effectively, and not just it's cool
Mm.
to work on. It's actually making a difference in the world.
Mhm.
Um, and I think through all of those experiences that I've had along the way, that's actually it's given me all of the experience I now have, that like expertise in digital. But I know
Mhm.
that I want to give it to a sector that sorely lacks it, which is the charity
Mhm.
charity space. And so, yeah, that's kind of how it all came to be up to today, effectively.
That's from the beginning of time up to now, well, up to
Pretty
date.
much, yeah,
I'm going to tie it all back to your first answer. So, like to me, I mean, obviously through that, you're going through a developmental path. You're experiencing all these different organizations, but you're also going up in size of the organizations as you go through.
yeah,
So you're seeing how these things handle things.
yeah,
And I think like for a lot of startups as they grow, like I've been in organizations that have gone from like mid-size to a larger size, and that can be really painful
yeah,
because you're used to working with a small team and it all works and it gels, and then all these other people come in and it's like, oh, hang on,
yeah,
it's not working quite as well as it did, and then it sort of settles down. So you're seeing these kind of things, the kind of relationships that are going on. You're meeting various different clients,
yeah,
so you're moving towards that. But like as you were saying all of that, I'm also thinking architecture. So you're thinking conceive the thing, plan the thing, build the thing, build something, bring something into the world, make it more beautiful. So
absolutely.
there we go, all the way back to architecture.
Beautiful. I love that. I love that. Yeah, and I think you mentioned there about the startups and the sort of they crumble when they get to a certain size. I do
Mm,
think through everything that I learned on the job and working at places where there was literally four of us, and there was
mm,
then 400 of us, and there was 50 of us, and
mm,
there's 30 of us. I've seen a lot of different things along the way. The cultures, the cliques that are formed, the socials where half of the people don't go because they don't like the other half and things,
mm,
all of these different dynamics. And I think so when it came to running my own thing, and Tom's the same as well because he's had similar experiences at both big and small places.
mhm,
We always wanted to ensure that what we had was a very small, tight knit group of people that we work with.
mhm,
um, there's some really interesting research out there about once you go over 13, I think it's a random number like that, or 11, cliques start to form because you do start to have segregation and people who are a friend of one of them and then they split off and you start to get these like little cliques. So we always want to keep the agency small, and it's not just it's easier because you can just talk to everybody, but I think through everything that I've learned managing people as well and trying to
mhm,
ensure that everyone feels like they have a voice and can say what they want and that they have progression in their own job. I think you can only
mhm.
do that at a certain level unless you're an absolute monolith of a company and you've got HR teams out of you've got 1,000 HR managers and all this kind of stuff. So
Yeah, but you need them to be shit hot as
yeah,
well. Like,
all of them to
so
be
you
great.
need the really best people because, like, wherever there's a weak link, it's going to fall down there. We've all been in a big, well, not all of us, but plenty of us have been in big organizations where it's
Yeah,
like, oh, we're the best at this, and then there's
yeah,
one manager who's like, "Oh,
yeah,
I'm not bothered."
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that affects then that team that are under that person, and
Yep. Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, it's interesting all the things I've learned along the way and the things that you see and the things you go like when I run something and I hire someone, they're never
Hmm.
going to have to see that. Like I'm going to ensure that they don't have to like go through the stuff I've seen and learned and
Hmm.
done to
Hmm.
have a good job that they enjoy. That's basically
Hmm.
one of my personal goals.
Okay, so before I go into the other questions, I'm going to ask you this question. So, like, are you getting to do what you want to do now, or since you've gone sort of self-employed, since you're running the business, are you now just reading management books and business, listening to business podcasts, and like, not doing any design or coding or anything. Like, how is it working as you want it to?
It is, yeah. It's always a question I get asked about. Like, do you even design anymore, or are you just like in
Mm,
Excel documents and stuff? And no, I still get to design, and I think that's the benefit of being like myself and Tom are almost front of house. So
mm-hmm,
we are the people that our charity clients get to meet initially. So we're the sales people, if you like.
mm-hmm,
But we really pride ourselves on the people you meet are the people you work with, because
mm-hmm,
that quickly disappears in a large agency. You've got a really great salesman or saleswoman who will sell you the earth.
mm-hmm,
Eventually, when that work gets booked in, it's probably going to be a junior or a middleweight person designing and building that project. And
mm-hmm,
what the client thinks they're getting can be very different to what they actually are getting. And so I still get to do a lot of the things I enjoy, but there are obviously a lot of other things that I didn't learn before. So actually running a business and
mm.
actually converting sales is things I've learned on the job, because obviously everywhere I'd ever worked, I was like, I'm really good at my job, but the sale would just land on your desk. That had
Yeah,
already
the
been
work
done.
came to you. You didn't
Yeah,
have to find it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and even freelancing, that was the same, because I'd
Mm,
worked at agencies, or I'd been recommended by someone at an agency to work with them, etc. It was all very word of mouth, all like just natural.
mm,
So that's been one of the biggest things, is being better at like sales and um, getting yourself into uncomfortable conversations, and like holding the pauses and all of this kind of stuff. It's all things we've had to learn along the way. And I'm sure that's the same for a lot of like entrepreneurs and people who are starting up. Like,
mm.
they're good at one thing and they think I can make this work, but there's so many other things to learn along the way, like managing a team, for example, and contracts, employment policies,
Mm.
all of this kind of stuff. Um, is
Customer
all stuff I've had
service as
to
well.
learn.
All the
Yeah,
customer service stuff
yeah,
as well. Because if you've not done it before, I mean, it's largely just being polite, but
yeah.
it's good to have practice at anything, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's largely just being a good human being.
Yeah,
Most of what we do is just about just don't be a dickhead.
yeah,
Like a lot of it, it's about just being a good person and supporting, obviously, a great sector that's in dire need of help. Like,
mm,
um, and yeah, so we're really proud of that. But like a lot of the things we've had to do, is it's kind of codifying just mine and Tom's beliefs. A lot of it, so
hmm,
as I mentioned earlier, we want to keep the agency small. We want to ensure that everyone has a voice. It's fine me saying that, and that's mine and Tom's belief. But anyone joining the company doesn't know that unless I just say it to them. So we've had to, over the last few years, really ensure that's actually stated in policies and in our mission and our values and our
yeah,
employee handbook and things like that. So, and I kind of manage all of that. So that's been really helpful in our next step, which is we've applied for B Corp. So we've submitted our assessment to become a B Corp.
hmm,
Um, and that's been really helpful in structuring our business properly, because like it's fine as we think we're good people and we've got good beliefs, but it needs to, how do you evidence that, how do you prove that, how do you when a member of staff
hmm.
starts, how do you actually, where can they read that and see that and understand that? So
Yeah.
uh,
It's like when people look at us, what do they see? And that's hard to understand.
yeah,
And like one of the things that I'm thinking about, or I've started thinking about at the minute, is this whole idea of continuity, and the like it's the whole thing with social media of like, because not everyone sees you post, not everyone's following, like, so the continuity that they experience of you or your brand is very different to the one that you're actually putting out. So,
yes,
and you've no idea how the message is actually landing, and it's, yeah, it's a
yeah,
whole minefield,
yeah,
conceptual minefield as well, because you sort of groping in the dark, aren't you? Sort of like best guess of like,
yeah,
will this work? Will this respond with people? Do people like this? Am I hitting my audience here?
yeah, yeah,
Mm,
absolutely. I think on the continuity as well, that was a big reason why I actually wanted to do the agency. I was out freelancing, as I've said, but I was like, I don't want to be a 50-year-old designer going into a cool little agency with young people there,
mm,
um, because first of all, I'd never seen it because this sort of, well, my generation, I felt like we're one of the first generations that really had this like web agency, digital, like this whole industry in Korea has
Hmm.
blown up as I've moved with it,
Yeah.
and so I've never seen anyone that's like um way older than me doing the work I was doing at the time. So I was always like, what am I, I can't see me getting like retiring doing this,
Hmm.
like. And so the agency is a concept of being, this is actually something that can be passed along to people who are better and younger than myself and Tom, who have
Hmm.
the same beliefs and the same drive that we do, but they're just coming at it, like they're coming at it at a younger age than we are,
Hmm.
So it is fundamentally about trying to like leave something great behind, and not just like, let's just sell it up and make loads of money and like I can retire at 50. It's about, I mean, that'd be great, but
Hmm.
we don't want to do that. We want to make sure it can grow and continue to help charities even if we aren't part of that anymore. So
Hmm.
yeah, that was almost like a bit of like some self reflection I did a few years ago about like, I'm just freelancing and the money's great, but when that freelancing dries up, I don't have anything left, and I haven't really left a mark. So this is our way of doing that and trying to do that. So um, yeah.
Before I move on, final question in this area. So, in terms of kind of entrepreneurial drive, was having your own business ever on your radar? Was there other people in your life that kind of they ran their own businesses, and you're like, it's always interesting to me where the idea comes from. Like I toyed with asking people about what their parents did and stuff like that to
Mm,
see how that impacted.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, where did I've forgotten
Um,
my own question now?
no, about where my sort of entrepreneurial thing came from.
Yeah, the drive for it.
I think even when I was 16, 17, and I was doing these service swap favors for like my driving instructor and other people like that, I tried to do it through this idea that it's like a company, like it isn't just
Hmm.
call, it's like a company. I had a little website and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, I didn't have any of what I'd learned then over the next 15 years to
Hmm.
back me up. And I was like, I look back and I just laugh at go, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. But the drive to do it, I don't actually know where that came from, to run my own business, because my mum had always worked in like law firms. She was like a legal PA, so she just worked in that sector almost her whole life. And my
Hmm.
dad had worked at one company for his entire, from when he was 16 to when he retired. He was a mechanic, and he'd worked his way up through to become the regional training manager for all new mechanics. So, but he was like a one company man,
Hmm.
one job man his whole life. So, um, the running your own business isn't actually something that's in my family.
Hmm.
Um, but I've never had anyone tell me not to do it either.
Yeah.
So I've never gone, oh, I don't do that. Just stick with your job or whatever. They've always
That's
supported me.
not for you. You need to get down pit, you do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they've always been like, go for it. If you've,
Yeah.
go for it and stuff like that. So, um, and I'm quite, I'm quite stubborn. Like if I make my mind up, I'll just do it anyway. So,
Mm.
when I decided to quit my job and go freelance, I do remember a little bit of like, oh, are you sure? Because I'd worked all this time, and the money was great, but like,
Mm.
and they were thinking, he's doing great. We don't have to worry about him. He's on a lot of money and he's enjoying it.
Mm.
And then he wants to throw it all away. I do get it from their side, but I didn't feel
Mm.
fulfilled in my job. Um, but then when I was freelancing and that was going great, I think me making the transition to actually running my own business again was a very, very
Mm.
easy one for everybody to understand and accept why I was doing it, and supported me in doing so.
Mhm.
And it's great now because every time I see my parents, they're always like, "How's business?" They're dead interested in knowing about what we're doing, who we're hiring, what clients we've been working on, and that's great. But yeah, the drive for it, I actually don't have an answer. It was just something I'd always thought I'd love to have my own like design agency, like my own creative
Mm.
agency.
And also, why not me?
Yeah,
Why not you? Why can't I run a business?
yeah, yeah. And I think actually what used to pushed me away from the idea was the fact that I was self-taught and that I hadn't got a degree in graphic design or art or anything. But
Yeah.
I've just taken another path. I've just made my own path really and kind of done it my own way. It's been a bit of a up and down along the way, but it's all been incredible experience that's led me to the point I'm at now, really.
Yeah. Yeah. It all makes sense when you look back.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I can laugh now about the
Depending on
two.
where you're standing.
Yeah, I can laugh now about the two redundancies. It's long ago now, so it's
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Because it's a great story now. Because it's like, what, you got hit by lightning twice.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So we'll probably go through these a little quickly because I think there's some other bits as well that I want to kind of cover with you. So we'll do COVID first. We've kind of touched on some of it.
Mm.
I mean, and we've covered some of the story of the business through COVID as well with Tom's interview. From your perspective, what are the things that kind of stand out from COVID? Like, what was your, I guess, what was your experience of the lockdown and coming out? Like, what was the working experience of that? And
Yeah,
was it a big change work wise, like in terms of your workload and I guess your work space?
yeah, sure. So like, I don't think it changed how myself and Tom worked. Like, it was still me and just him back then, and we often used to work together, but also remotely. So the remote setup wasn't something was alien to us.
Hmm.
So that all was fine. I think obviously it was an extremely scary time for everyone, the complete unknown of what the hell was going on. And I think the big problem we found was we just took on way too much work. Like, we were taking on
Mm.
work because we were like, well, we don't know where the next bit of work's coming from. You were hearing companies going bust, companies struggling, companies pulling funding, all this kind of stuff. It was a crazy time. So myself and Tom for a year and a half, I think, we're just taking on way, way, way too much stuff. And it was good for us to go, well, we've got loads of work, but
Mm.
I remember us coming out of COVID and just being exhausted and we were looking at each other going like, this is just not fun. This is not what
Yeah.
I didn't have this in my 150-page slide that I presented to him at the pub. This
Well,
was
it's the busy fools thing, isn't it? It's
yes,
like because
yeah,
yeah.
and really that was it's funny because the pandemic really was the catalyst for us changing entirely the business model to work with
Hmm.
charities, because we came out of the other side of it and we're just like, this is not fun. Like, this isn't what we thought it would be. But when we look
Mm.
back, those slides and the idea for the business actually missed out an important aspect, which was like, who are the clients we're actually going to work with. It was all about what we want out of it. We want a small agency, and it's going to be really cool, and we're going to do this cool stuff and all that lot. But it didn't
Mm.
actually speak to who we wanted to work with. And
Mm.
when we came out the other side, and it was like, we're just burnt out and exhausted. That's when we had all the self reflection on what can we do. And that's where, obviously, I mentioned it earlier, but like, my dream of always getting back to working with charities kind of came back to the forefront, really.
Mm.
Um and so it's funny, yeah, the pandemic was horrible and difficult, but it was probably the kick that we needed to actually, instead of just treading water and pile it high, sell it cheap type work that we were doing,
Mm.
just throw all that away and get back to what we actually really want to do, make a difference in the world. So
Mm.
yeah, it didn't affect our partnership. um it was just, I just didn't get to see him, which was, I just
Yeah.
we used to literally be on camera all day like this, so we weren't even chatting. It was just like, there's someone else there.
Yeah.
I remember Tom going, "Do you want a brew?" a few times. I'm like, "I'm not even there, mate. Unless you're going to send me it, like, I can't have it." But yeah, other than that, it was fine. It was fine,
Yeah.
really. Just not, obviously, having enough chance to speak and hang out in person was difficult.
So, in terms of bringing more people into the team, so was that as we came out of lockdown, or was that happening while we were still locked down?
We never.
Were you hiring people remotely? I guess I'm asking, and
No,
interviewing people.
no, we
No.
we never felt we were in a position, and I think we took on loads of work, but it wasn't at a price that actually helped move us forward. It was just keeping myself and Tom afloat.
Yeah.
And so we were overloaded with work, but never in a position to actually like hand off any of this work to anyone, a freelancer, a remote person, a full-time member of staff. We were just never at that point.
Yeah.
And so it would just more and more work on myself and Tom.
Yeah.
And that was really tough. And when we started coming out of COVID, we did start looking to hire, and we did hire someone, a developer actually, to support Tom. And it actually didn't work out because coming out of the back of it, we were like, well, we had all this work.
Mm.
And then that work dried up, and then that person had no work on, the classic. And we had
Mm.
to. They actually handed their notice in, just saying that I don't really think this is going to work out. And that was an awful experience that like really made us question, what are we doing here? We need to hire someone because we've got more work, but then
Mm.
when they're here, the work dries up, and it's just really hard hiring your first member of a team. Really, really difficult. Um,
I
but yeah,
mean,
we got.
if you were to do it again, what direction would you have gone? Would you have brought in like a business development person or like a bookkeeper or something? Like, how would you maybe have done it different?
I think, yeah, on reflection, we will probably bring someone in to help with our own marketing because we've always been like
Yeah.
terrible at it. And it's only
Well, because you
terrible.
don't get the time as well because
Well, I
you're
was going to say
working.
it's only terrible through the fact that if I'm working on a project, I can't create any marketing
Yeah.
assets,
Yeah.
blog posts, social assets, and it
Yeah.
just gets left behind. And before you know it, that can be 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And we've
Yeah.
learned over the years, obviously, if you're not always in front of people, you're never in their mind. So
Yeah.
that's been a big thing. But hiring has become a lot easier because we now have an actual process and sales funnel and know who we're
Hmm.
actually wanting to work with and who we want to talk with and who we don't want to work with and who we don't want to talk to.
Hmm.
And that's made the whole thing a lot easier. Whereas back then it was just like trying to fight fires and like maybe we should hire someone to help fight fires with us and all that kind of stuff. And
Hmm.
yeah, it was a mess back then.
All learning experiences, though. You're still
Absolutely.
here. That's the main thing. Um, so I'll do Brexit next because I
Mm.
don't think this would really have affected you at all, but it might have. So, since we've Brexited, has it changed your work at all?
I don't think it has.
Mm.
I don't think it's. I know some businesses have actually benefited from it, but I don't. I don't think we've benefited or been negatively affected by either. I think we've just stayed the same, really.
Mm.
Um, I I hate that we left the EU. I don't agree with Brexit, but as a business owner, I don't think it's positively or negatively affected us. Really, I feel like we're just on our own journey. I don't feel like we're being, we've massively benefited from X or we've been screwed over by Y. I just
Hmm.
it hasn't really affected us on a big enough scale to feel like it's really done anything to us, to be
Hmm.
honest. And I don't know if that's common on the podcast that it has really affected many people that you spoke to, but
I
um,
think the main answer is no, it's not had an effect.
yeah,
But obviously, I'm kind of ghettoized in the people that I'm speaking to. So
yeah,
because especially this year, a lot of people come from LinkedIn as well.
yeah,
Um, I think it'd be really interesting to see, and it might not be there, but like the if it's affected any charity giving. If maybe if people were giving to more international causes and they've maybe started giving more to national causes rather than international,
yeah.
um,
That's
or if people are
interesting.
giving
Yeah, I
more,
mean,
or
I don't have really any data to kind of back that up, but um, it's certainly something I'd like to look at because I think it will have affected where people give money to. Definitely,
hmm.
I definitely think it will have done that. Um, but I think it may have galvanized a lot of UK based charities to probably work together more than they ever did before. Because I think I'm seeing a lot of, I feel like I'm seeing a lot more charities collaborate now than I did maybe a few
I
years
think that was
ago.
COVID as well. Like the COVID, because especially in Leeds, where it was like civil society that like had to organize and did, and were really good at sort of making the links of like, oh, this group's, they've all got together, and the council are like, oh, that's really good. Here, have, you
Yeah,
know, a shopping trolley and £5 or whatever.
absolutely.
Like,
I think the pandemic was massive for charities because, but you have to think that most charities weren't even set up to work remotely at that time. They
hmm.
you know they all
Hmm.
used to go into the HQ together and work there. And you know, the cost of Zoom, you know, is difficult for a charity when they have no money. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just a very, very small example of all of the problems that charities had to go through the pandemic. You know, no in person fundraisers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can't do the Leeds Marathon, the Leeds 10K this year. You know, the Kirkstall Run, all of these things that are normally really good money makers for a charity, out of
Mm-hmm.
the window.
Mm-hmm.
So them all getting together and leaning on each other and helping each other out was massive, I think, through the pandemic, because we saw loads of that. And it makes sense, right, that they work together. You know, a lot of services that support one person who's maybe suffering with their mental health, you know, can support a charity who helps homeless people, because they're
Yeah.
so linked.
Yeah.
It seems like a no brainer now, but I think before it was very much like it's us and them, and
Mm-hmm.
not in a bad way. They just haven't considered how they can work together. And I think through the pandemic, we had to go. You guys need to all get online together and like solve this problem. And like you say, this civil society and Leeds
Mm-hmm.
Community Foundation and all of these other people who help with like grants through the pandemic and
Mm-hmm.
all that kind of stuff to keep people afloat. I think it's really made people aware of like, if this happened again, God forbid, we're a lot more like, we're ready. We're a lot more prepared now. We're a lot more savvy and smart to like what could happen and where we can go. So yeah, it's been an interesting time, but I definitely think it's made things more collaborative in that sector. Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you have to kind of leverage your assets more and work on all those efficiencies and so on.
Yeah.
And it's not just about losing people to save money. It's also like, well, do we need this resource? Do we need to spend
Yeah.
X thousands of pounds on having a physical presence somewhere when that money could be going towards
Yeah.
something else? Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, so let's do climate change, then we'll do social media. Um, so, climate change, is this something that's on your agenda? And if so, how can you, like, what can you do? I mean, obviously, working remotely and stuff, reducing commutes, that's quite good. Um, but is it something that the business is concerned with? Do you have policies or anything around it? Is it something that concerns you, I guess, as well? Does it
Yeah.
affect your work?
It is. Yeah. I a few years ago, I read a book called "Let My People Go Surfing," and it's
Mm-hmm.
by I think he's called Yvonne. I can't pronounce his name. It's Chouinard, I think. He's actually the guy who founded Patagonia,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
the hiking apparel company. And I've always been a bit of a fan of his because he started the B Corp movement as well, and the 1% for the Planet membership alliance. And I read his book and found it absolutely fascinating, because it really opened my eyes to like how even his business, which was all about going outdoors and enjoying the great outdoors, was actually having a negative effect on the world.
Mm-hmm.
So he started out by creating climbing gear, so like the pegs that you'd hammer into rocks, and then you climb up it. And he was seeing over the years that like all of his tools were destroying the places that he loved, like all they were putting bolts all in these rocks and all that kind of stuff. And so he wanted to start making things that were way more sustainable. And so for me, he's a bit of a beacon for like, he's one guy who started going, I'm going to just make my business fully sustainable and like, all of this kind of stuff. So if you buy a t-shirt from Patagonia, for example, it's made out of like 1,000 recycled bottles and things like that. It's like crazy the stuff they're doing, but they're doing it on a huge global scale as a massive corporate.
Mm-hmm.
But I read his book, and it was all about like, no matter how small like the difference is, we can all do something to help and save the planet effectively. And so I read this book on holiday, and when I got back, I said to Tom, I went, I want us to become a 1% for the Planet member. Like, I want us to be part of that, like now. And that was my way of going. It's been on my mind for a long time. It bothers me. I see it on the news, but I don't know what to do. And this
Mm-hmm.
felt like a thing that I could latch onto and go like, it's only a small thing, but I'm doing my part. And so 1% for the Planet is about giving 1% of your revenue away every single year, whether we've made a profit or not. So, um, it's quite a lot, and it's a commitment, a proper commitment that
Mm-hmm.
we're proud to have. And it's great because when it comes to giving away your 1%, you get to go on the website and look at the directory and go, who are we going to support? So, we try and support local causes. So we helped Yorkshire Wildlife Trust last year and Big Blue Ocean Cleanup. This year we helped an organisation who were actually educating younger people on climate change and what they can do. And I think that's a great thing to be doing. And we also, I think we give it to Yorkshire Millennium. Is it the Yorkshire Millennium Trust? I think they're called. So yeah, like basically organisations that are helping locally, but also further afield in the education of it. So that's one thing, and then the other thing is the B Corp stuff. So B Corp is very much about, well, it's about all things. It's about how much you pay your staff, what local suppliers you use, the policies that you have in the workplace, but also what are you doing for the environment. And so that's been a really good thing to like follow along with and like change things as we've grown, to ensure we're doing the right thing. So, for example, it's only a small thing, but quite a big thing on a large scale is like all of the servers that our websites are hosted on is using 100% renewable energy, for example. So it's little things like that where it can make
That's huge, though.
it can make a
Yeah.
big difference. I've seen a lot of websites now are looking at these like carbon footprint tools and things of that nature, and I think that'll be the next thing where everyone's looking for more lightweight websites that are, have a smaller footprint, and that'll be an interesting thing to see. But yeah, they're kind of two of the main things that we've worked on to try and help in the space.
Okay, so we'll move on to social media, but I also want us to talk about AI as well. So because you've mentioned there that kind of change, because yeah, loads of businesses will move into that and do the low carbon, we're really cool, we're really low impact. Meanwhile, giant evil corp is building nuclear power stations
I know.
to power their AI. So, and pouring nuclear waste everywhere. So yeah, and the other thing with the AI thing is your kind of reflections on it, given that all your work, like your career is off your work that you did, that
Yeah.
you found out how to do, you generated, and it was there for people to see, and they knew you had done it.
Yeah.
We don't live in that world anymore.
No, we don't. No. It feels like
So
AI.
yeah, what your kind of how social media affects your work, and then kind of reflections on AI. I know that's a lot to throw at you in one bundle, but yeah, that's
I don't actually think social media affects our work too much. I actually find us advising charities more on where they should be using their social media. So obviously at the moment, Twitter or X, there's a lot of bad things going on there with Elon, and a lot of charities obviously reach out going like, what the hell do we do? Do we leave? A lot of our
yeah.
people are there,
Hmm.
but we fundamentally don't agree. So as far as our business and how we use social media, it is literally to talk about like the difference we've made to organizations and promote free services that we support charities with, etc. But it's more how charities are struggling to be like, not only have we got dramas going on over here with X, but then there's like Threads that's come out of nowhere, and that's like the new big hot platform. And then they're all still trying to figure out how to use Snapchat and TikTok and all this kind of stuff. So it's an ever moving target for them, but it's always fun to try and help them, support them, and all of that kind of stuff with social media. Um, AI, yeah, as a creative person, it's obviously like frightening. It is genuinely frightening. Like I often see on my own Instagram, like how to generate a whole, you know, piece of art in a click of a button, and it blows my mind.
You can there's sites. I was saying the thing. There's a site where you can like print 100 books, like AI books, and it costs you like $16 or whatever. It's like,
Yeah,
why would you need that?
it's like anything is AI. It's like if it's used correctly, it can obviously be good. But like you say about the printing books, I mean, I don't know if you saw the Willy Wonka experience that guy ran with AI. I mean, that was all apparently generated with AI. So all of the promotional materials, the marketing posters,
Yeah.
the script. which
Mm.
made absolutely no sense to anyone. And also, I think
Mm.
this guy, allegedly anyway, he has lots of books on Amazon for sale that are all just AI generated, and it's just like,
Yeah, they all do. Yeah.
disgraceful, really. And we've unfortunately started to see it in certain aspects of what we do. So, job applicants,
Hmm.
so cover letters, you can see it, you can tell
Yeah.
someone hasn't written it, unfortunately. And for us, it's straight in the bin because if you can't put your own thought,
Yeah.
feelings, and name to your own CV and cover letter,
Mm.
why are we even gonna, spend the time? And I think it's like anything, especially in the charity sector. It's about education. They're all excited that AI is gonna like save
Mm.
them, hundreds of hours a week and all this kind of
Hmm.
stuff. But it's not. Like you can put anything into Chat GPT. Myself and Tom did it the other day, and we just said, tell us about few and far in Leeds, and it started talking about some like tattooist in Sydney. And it's like you only have to look at the content
Yeah.
to know it's trying to learn and trying to understand, so you have to help it out yourself. And
Mm.
it isn't just an answer to everybody's problems.
Yeah.
So it can be used. I know we chatted at the start about how it can help save you time with transcripts, for example, or
Mm.
summaries of meetings and things like that. Um, I'm a trustee for Leeds Mind, so I've been in these board meetings where someone's manually writing down
Mm.
everybody's notes for the whole 4 hour meeting. And I
Mm.
do think, man, they should just get like an AI chatbot to like just get it back, get it all to them within minutes effectively.
Mm.
That's a good time saver. But I think using it to sort of in place of like, especially for a charity, they're starting to use it for like their content for their website and like how they speak and all that kind of stuff. And it
Mm.
frightens me because really the how you speak and who you speak to should all be about the charity's personality, their brand personality. And when that's being made by someone who isn't the charity, it's being made by a bot.
Hmm.
That is not a personality. Then that is a falsehood. So,
Mm.
yeah, I don't like to see it in art. I think where it can be used to save people a little bit of time is good, but
Hmm.
you still have to manually check it anyway.
Well, that's it. How much time is it saving you? And like, I mean, the term more and more to me is I hate the expression AI because it's not intelligent. It can't
Yeah,
know. It can't think. It
yeah,
can't like. There's
yeah.
no intelligence there, and yeah, it's what it outputs is sludge. It's like the when people say AI sludge, and I'm like, yeah, it is. Um,
It feels like the next thing that is being pushed on us all. So
yeah, but it is. It's
you
the new like. Let's make a bubble. NFT didn't work. Let's try and make a bubble out of
I
this.
was
And
going to say NFT. Like NFT was the thing we were all told like we're missing out on, and it's like everyone's got to have it. Twitter started implementing NFT avatars and all this kind of stuff.
mm,
Does anybody talk about it now? No, they don't.
mm,
And it's like you do a Google search and it's all Google Gemini AI all this kind of stuff, and
mm-hmm,
you're like, I'm not even opted into that. You're just giving me it, and it's kind of like it should be a choice if you use it or you don't
yeah,
use it, and that's
yeah,
what bothers me. Like it's starting to be implemented into things I fundamentally use every day, like my Gmail account and my
yeah.
Google searching, and I don't really I don't need it. I don't need to use it.
Was this thing
So
that like tech companies have had for ages, and then they're just leaning more and more into it. It's this sort of like, "Oh, it's ours. We'll do what we want with it" thing,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is fine. It is your property and so on.
yeah,
But at the same time, it's like back to customer service. It's like, what kind of a user experience are you giving there? Where you're just like, oh no. We don't do that service anymore. No, you have to do this now. No, you queue over there now. It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
that's that's not how you treat your customer base. You're supposed to be developing relationships. You don't just assume they will be there and
yeah.
like
Exactly.
treat them however you want.
Exactly, yeah. I think another thing that's like I don't want to criticize anyone, but like the amount of AI specialist agencies or companies that have
Mm,
come out, it's like it's not even been out that long. I know it's been out; it
mm,
has been out long actually in the grand scheme, but like it feels just like the hot thing to sort of jump on and
yeah,
like have your business be built around, and again that doesn't often work out with any of the other trends and things that have been and gone over the years. So
yeah.
interested to see where it goes. I don't think it's going away like NFTs did, to be honest. But yeah, it's
But there
only
are
going to,
genuine useful applications, aren't they? So like it will find places where
yeah,
it can sit. But I think in terms of this hype and stuff, because I don't think the public are interested either. You know, like people are turned off by products that they're advertising that they've put
yeah,
AI into because
yeah.
why would you?
Exactly. Yeah, we were chatting the other day because we have a free resource hub on our website which is for charities. So it's all about like the state of X or
Mm,
how to correctly check accessibility on your website, etc. But we were going to write an article about like using Chat GPT, but not just promoting GPT as the be all and end all. It's about
mm,
using it to your advantage, but like how you need to educate it as well, and like
mm-hmm,
taking because it can be quite good to put it in and it give you back what it thinks you are or what your charity
mm-hmm,
is or what your organization does and be able to reflect on that and like massage the questions to get better answers out of it. So we're trying to write guides that are not like vouching for it, but like we know you're using it, so like at least try and use it in the right way.
mm-hmm,
And I think there'll be a lot more of that. I've seen a few other people trying to help people where everyone's asking about AI. How do I use AI? I want to use AI. AI is going to save
mm-hmm,
everything, but use it right and use it properly and don't rely on it too much. So,
mm-hmm,
yeah, interesting to see where it all goes.
mm. Yeah, definitely. Definitely don't use it for pictures yet.
No, and don't use it for your CV. Anyone who's listening, please don't put it in your CV.
If you, yeah, like so, um, what you want to do if you're doing a job application now is go proper old school, write a handwritten letter because it will be opened because nobody gets handwritten
Yeah,
mail.
yeah,
And they'll be like, "Oh my god, someone sat down and wrote this to
yeah,
me."
yeah.
You're probably going to get an interview off that.
You are, yeah. I mean, I got a leaflet through at the office a few weeks ago, and it was handwritten, and it was a photographer, and he'd wrote a handwritten note in it, and I was like, I've kept it. Like, I haven't
Mm,
thrown it in the bin. I've kept it, and I still haven't reached out to him. I'm really bad at that, but I've kept it because they've put the effort in.
yeah.
And that when you're applying for a job, that is literally the only we have to expect that you're going to put the effort in, and when it's done
Mm.
by AI or something else, it's just like all of these words. Do you even know what they mean? Like
Well, yeah,
it's
you're
bonkers.
trying to stand out and you're doing
Yeah,
the exact opposite.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, just use it sparingly and don't use it for really important documents.
Yeah, yeah. Um, okay, so that's all the kind of things that affect you questions, like things that are affecting your work from outside. So let's go inside now, and let's talk about what you might want to change. This is a bit more difficult when people run their own businesses because a lot of it you can change. So you might have some difficulty thinking of three, but if there were any three things that you could change about your work, what would you change?
Oof, that's quite the question. I think I think as we evolve as a business, I think we would probably be at the moment we help very small to medium sized organizations. I think just as we grow, that will naturally change to more medium to large organizations.
Hmm.
And obviously for us as a business, that's where we feel like more impact can be made by helping larger organizations. Obviously, if they are like foundations or charity membership style
Hmm.
networks and things where you're kind of because we do a lot of things voluntary as well. We do a lot of mentorship, a lot of webinars, talks, and education in the sector. And so naturally, if you've got like a member network of 50 charities, that's going to be of more benefit for us and for them than it would be just helping a very small one-off like a community centre, for example. So I could
Mm.
definitely see us moving into more as the team grows, the scale of impact we have will grow as well. That's something I'm excited about. I would like us to move more into doing animation and motion as an agency because we don't do a lot of that,
Mm.
and videography as well. Video content is king, as we all know, and at the moment we have great people we rely on and recommend to charities and etc. But I'd love to like bring that in house eventually and like have more of a. I don't want to be full service, but I do want to be able to if they like us and they know we can help them, we can keep most of the things we do in house and be experts at it rather than trying
Mm.
to send them off to another contact, etc.
Hmm.
So that'd be two, and the third one, um, I think I don't know. This is a really boring one, but just continuing to do what we do. That's a really boring one, but I feel like
No.
we're really good at what we do, and we just need to. We can help more organisations be better by them working with
Yeah.
us and then using our consultancy and leaning on us to help them. Because the sector itself, obviously, most charities have a website, they have a partner, they have a supplier they work with, but it's
Hmm.
very reactive. And it's
Yeah.
kind of like the charity has to go, hey, we have a problem with this page and we'd like it to be better. And
Hmm.
they go, cool, yeah, we can do that. This is X amount of money, 3 days of work. And the charity doesn't even know if the decision is the right one for them. And it's money
Yeah.
that's coming out of their, very small pot of marketing budget.
Yeah.
And the company's happy to take the money. But for me, that just comes back to just being a good human being and going, well, do you even need this work? Like, how about we have a
Yeah.
little chat just to explain, like, what you're asking for is quite a big change, and what's actually the problem here? Is it like, you want to help with this? What's actually the goal of doing this
Yeah.
work?
What are your
Um,
deliverables? What do you want to actually do? Not just have a
yeah,
website. Why do you want a website?
yeah, and we see that a lot where the relationships become really fractured and they feel like lost a little bit. They're like,
Mm.
well, every time we reach out to them, it costs us a load of money, and
Hmm.
so the website or the brand or whatever it is just starts to like get left behind, and the
Hmm.
organization's moving. They obviously move really quick and really rapid, and
Mm.
all of the communications get lost along the way. And
Hmm.
so we're trying to break down the doors on all of that and just be like, the amount of people we speak to go, this is like so refreshing and nice to just be able to like chat and explain our problems and then have like ideas come out of it. Um, and I think this is why we're seeing a lot of really large charities eventually just bring in their own like in-house team, because they're like, it's just a
Hmm.
problem. This like we
Hmm.
why don't we just hire and have our own people to do it, and we can have all of these conversations anyway. But they don't need to do that if they just have people that can actually talk to them on
Hmm.
a good level about what it is they want to do. So yeah, we're really proud of what we do and how we do it and how we function and what our process is, and we know that
Hmm.
that will help more and more organizations moving forward. So yeah, sticking to our guns basically
Hmm.
and doing more of that would be good.
I think that's an excellent answer, Colin. It's and like well, it's very rare that people will actually smash out three answers to
Great.
that, and the last one, I think you're sort of saying it's a rubbish answer, but that's an excellent answer, not only from a marketing perspective, but also like you are in a unique area,
Mm,
and going back to that thing I was saying about continuity, like you're providing something in that sector that they don't have, especially if you're a small charity where like you've got maybe one person who's the charity and
yeah,
the occasional pot of like project money to run, like half an intern for a day.
yeah,
Like, and a lot of the smaller charities and stuff, they're very dependent on like, students and new graduates and stuff to do low paid first job. Like, they
absolutely.
don't really know what they're doing. They can't really bring great skills and experience, but they're getting skills and experience. But it's like, you can really add value to that whole process. You can help develop that person. You can
Yeah,
provide like a continuity of support to the 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 littler organizations, and you're also getting a really good overview of the city of like, and I don't know how strategic you're being with this, but it's kind of like we can really impact
yeah,
here or here or here, or like the work that we're doing here really would complement this. And
yeah.
so yeah, it's you're really nicely placed.
Yeah, a lot of our focus at the moment is helping that, that Marcoms person. And it is normally one or two people in a large charity who are wearing
Mm.
many hats, and they are, as I mentioned earlier, when Threads comes out or TikTok's the next thing, they're, oh, what are we doing about it? And they're like, I don't know myself, like I don't even know what that is yet. And they're constantly learning on the job about all of these different things, and they're responsible for their social media output, they're responsible for their website, they're
Mm-hmm.
responsible for making sure everyone else in the charity is using their brand correctly, or
Mm-hmm.
all of this kind of fundraising posters, everything. They touch everything, and they
Mm-hmm.
have no support a lot of the time. So a lot of what we do is like, what can we do, either as an extension of your team, or just free advice, come along to a talk, do a free workbook, get an audit from us for free, anything
Mm-hmm.
that can help support them, either argue their case internally because they maybe don't know, I need a budget and I don't really know how to explain what it's for, well,
Mm-hmm.
here's an audit that we've done for free. It explains why it's bad from an accessibility perspective, and that is affecting fundamentally the users of your website.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's something I can take to my board and ask them for some, for some funding or a grant
Mm-hmm.
or some budget. So yeah, we spend a lot of time trying to help that person, but I think the next step for us is actually going to the CEO, to the actual decision maker, and making sure they understand that stuff, and that they understand that that marketing person needs support, and that your website and donation platform and brand is way more important than you probably think it is. So
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to get into that space of educating on like the kind of board level, because
Mm-hmm.
they all think their brand's great and they think their website's great, but you have to change that. You have to change that kind of mindset a lot of the time, because a lot of these folk have been in the charity, before the internet was even around. So
Mm-hmm.
this is all new to them as well, and they sometimes have to let go and rely on their marketing people and the other people in the organization to say, okay, I don't get it, but I agree that like you need help and we should do something about it. So yeah, we're trying to like do a bit more education now on that like senior level, that higher level.
Mm-hmm.
um and I think that's why it's interesting for me, recently becoming a trustee, because I'm trying to learn more from their side as well, and like all of the problems, restricted funding, contracts, things coming to the end of their life, services that are provided, etc. It's fascinating,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to help us fundamentally move forward, and helping those higher ups to do better across the organisation. So yeah, that's a big aim for us moving forwards.
So I'll move on to final question, UBI question. Obviously, answer however you want to this. I don't think it would necessarily make a major difference to you. Maybe it might have changed some of your approach to your career, perhaps. But if there was a universal basic income, how might that have affected your work, or how might it affect your work now if it came in? Like, obviously, for the charity sector, there'd be all sorts of weird changes there that you couldn't necessarily anticipate.
Yeah, it's difficult to predict, but I mean, it feels to me. I thought about this before the podcast, and I was like, it feels to me like that would have a massive impact on like charities in general. Like, if
Mm,
I think it's funny that in an alternate reality, a lot of charities probably wouldn't exist if we had UBI. Like,
mm-hmm,
because a lot of people, a lot of charities that we work with, they're set up because they're providing like free financial advice or free
mm-hmm,
support, or to help you with your money, or all of that kind of stuff. And I think like if we were all on more of a fair level playing field with money that we had, would we need those? And that's obviously like the $1 billion question if that's the case. But
mm,
I do genuinely think that the country, there would be a better. I think everyone would just live a little bit of a better life with something like
mm,
that. And we probably, I mean, I don't think we would see as many organizations having to support people with certain things such as mental health, financial problems, um, if we had something like that. But it's very hard to say if that actually would
mm,
make a difference.
mm-hmm,
But yeah, it's a fascinating thing to think about. Especially with the types of charities we work with. We work with like cancer charities and things like that, and it would make no difference to that. But those more people in poverty and people who struggle, you,
mm-hmm,
you definitely feel like it make a massive difference to those types of people who end up homeless, etc.
mm-hmm.
Would it prevent that? And yeah, bit of a long answer that really, but it's more of a what if for me. Like, wow, like that'd be really interesting to see, especially in the sector we work in. Like, fascinating to
Yeah.
see if like how it would fundamentally impact charities. Some charities didn't exist. Obviously, for us, it's kind of bad as a oh, as clients gone now, they don't need our help anymore. But like that's obviously what you want for any charity. You don't want charities like who help with cancer research to exist anymore, because we've solved the
Mm-hmm.
problem, right? That's the point. We don't want charities to have to be there. Um, but yeah, I think it would fundamentally change like people and the economy and charities
Mm.
that exist and don't exist. I think it'd be fascinating to see.
So part of it for me is about breaking that link between labor and pay,
Mm,
and because I think and I've said this before, but I think with climate change, there's a lot of this because our focus is on production, be productive, do things, do things, do things all the time. And it's like you can't constantly produce, and you can't, your productivity can't run at a flat rate all the time because you're not a machine, and you wouldn't run any machine in the red the whole time anyway because
Mm,
it will break.
yeah.
So the whole thing of like, not everybody is employable and not everybody's great at working, and work is great and people do need things to do. And like, idleness and vagrancy are real things. And so, yeah, we need motivation, we need struggle, we need things to do. But do we need to all be doing 40 hours of it with,
Yeah.
like 10 hours travel added to
The
it?
grind.
Plus,
Yeah.
yeah, plus all of the additional stuff that you have to produce. It's like, maybe we should just chill a little bit and like work less. And I think breaking that connection between money and pay is a really important thing of
Yeah.
like, you don't have to kill yourself for the right to keep living.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the whole kind of uh, the employment and pay structure is just a mess anyway.
Mm,
Like single mums who are better off not working than working because they then don't receive the benefits of
mm,
childcare, and it's just like people want to work, but then it's not worth working, and then there are people who don't want to
yeah,
work and get more than others, and it's just a bit of a mess that's happened over a long, long time. But even things like trying to people can't even afford to think about the planet and things
yeah,
like that. We talked earlier
yeah,
about sustainability and things like people can't afford to care, unfortunately.
yeah.
People like where we live, for example. The one of the tips is closing down, the council tip, so there's nowhere now to take your waste.
Mm-hmm.
Our garden bin, for example, costs us a fortune just to have it, like for them to
Mm.
collect it. And it's little things like that where it's like, well, if people can't afford that, they just leave it, they dump it,
Yeah,
flight
they
it.
won't pay for it. Yeah,
They're not going to pay for it. They can't afford to pay for it a lot of the time, and that it's just it's all wrong. It's all wrong
yeah,
that like, and we'll never make that giant leap forward with like trying to help the planet and with climate change if everything's at a cost to people
yeah.
like a lot of the time.
Well,
Uh,
they still haven't understood this. Like, debts that can't be paid won't be paid.
yeah,
End of story. End of story.
yeah,
That's it. Full stop. There is no further discussion of that.
yeah,
Like, but it's this whole idea that, oh no, everything must be paid forever. Like,
yeah,
it's like you're taking a risk too. It's an asset and a liability.
yeah,
You're supposed to like. There's supposed to be the opportunity for you to lose out in this. That's why it's a risk where you get a reward if you take that risk and it pays off.
yeah, yeah,
Like, oh no,
absolutely.
we don't do that anymore. You just take a big risk and then the public will bail you out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just it's a big mess.
Mm,
But yeah, hopefully Labour can do some stuff, but whether they will or not, I don't know. We'll have to
we
see.
will see.
Yeah, we will see.
My expectation is he'll he's already getting to sort of Rishi popularity in about
Yeah,
2 years there'll be somebody else there and
yeah. It's just one after the other, isn't it? But yeah, we'll
well that
we'll have to see how it goes.
yeah
Um,
I think we won't see a change until we see a real change sort of
yes.
thing, but yeah
Yeah. Yeah.
but that's not for us to decide.
No.
um So this is the point where I throw it over to you. I've still not remembered that thing that I was going to bring up.
It's all right.
Um, yeah. So where can people find you? The other part of this as well is if there's anything that you want to ask or anything that you want to cover or anything that you want to shout about or talk about or just soapbox about, you can
Yeah,
feel
sure.
free to do
Well,
that here.
yeah. Well, the first thing I'll ask is I mentioned at the start, but I'd love to know more about why you started Working Hours podcast. You've done a lot of episodes now,
Hmm.
180 plus, maybe. Is it more than that?
No, well, the 130 published. I've got a few more in the can
Nice.
coming
Yeah.
along.
I knew it was over 100. But yeah, it's obviously to talk about the people of Leeds and what they do. But what drove you to do it, and why did you start it?
Because it was something creative that I could do largely on my own. I thought it would be relatively easy to find two people a week who would be up for talking about something simple like what they do.
Yeah.
And yeah, would be excited to be given the opportunity to be on a podcast, because that's quite exciting, isn't it? Oh, a podcast. Nobody's interested in that. Nobody wants to talk, and especially up here.
Mm.
I mean, there's a few, because there's always, there's the odd extrovert who wants to get involved in things. But yeah, 1,000 was kind of an arbitrary number that I came up with because it sounded like a good big goal. It's also a reasonable sample size, even though this isn't really a proper kind of social study. But I wanted to give it a bit of that aesthetic. I wanted there to be something that was a bit more careers advice, better careers advice, because career advice is generally crap. I've had a couple of people on here talk about their careers advice experience, which was a couple of people mentioning a computer program where you put various things in and then they tell you to go and work on a roller coaster.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. Down the job centre. Yeah, it's
yeah.
not great, is it?
So yeah, and to prove that there are more than the 12 jobs that people think there are in the world, including the government and the media. And yeah, anything that people are doing, somebody's working on that. And how did they do that? And why did they do that? And
Mm.
and Leeds, we get everywhere. So I thought I get the chance to talk about everything and anything with work and with Leeds. I get to try and promote, I would like to claim promote working class voices, but try and promote working class voices, which is easier said than done, especially since how much relevance that term even has anymore is very
Well, yeah.
spurious. I was in a gig last week, and the comedian was sort of like asking the audience, and he sort of asked if they were working class or middle class. This is in Chapel Allerton. And the audience weren't really sure if they were either of those things.
Mm.
So I don't know whether they were ashamed to claim either title or were like, didn't really feel they fit. So
Yeah,
that was
they're
interesting.
blurred now a little bit, aren't they? Like,
Yeah, because it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know if I'd even use a class category for myself anymore. I've found this guy, Benjamin Studebaker, who's a really interesting political theorist I've latched onto at the minute. And he talks about fallen professionals, people who've gone to university and have a certain expectation of like, oh, I should get a reasonable job here. And then that's not there available for you. So yeah, lots of reasons. I wanted to promote Leeds. I wanted to talk to more working class people because all the voices that you seem to hear now are all Oxbridge,
yeah,
like we've just been inundated with toffs and you don't seem to hear from anyone else anymore.
yeah. It's a big city as well. A lot of interesting stuff going on. Such a diverse, culturally diverse city. So many jobs, and the industry I'm in, the digital one, is it's massive now, isn't it? Channel 4 moved to the city,
Yeah.
increased loads of jobs, but there's so many different opportunities out there for people to get out into the workplace and see the world through the lens of quite a nice little city, which it's not my home actually, isn't Leeds. Bradford's
Mm.
where I'm from, but I've always worked in Leeds, so it's like my kind of home from home, and
Yeah.
somewhere I genuinely love through just being part of the city for so long now. So for people who've lived and grown up here, I can see why they're so passionate about the city.
Mm.
But yeah, there's so much to discover that people don't know about the city as well, isn't there? That's always interesting. So I think the podcast is a great outlet for that and a great way of highlighting and promoting everything that everybody does.
Well, the other thing as well, so Leeds is one of those cities that doesn't shout about itself or doesn't shout about itself enough. And it's an incredibly important city, is something that I've discovered. So, obviously, industrial revolution wise, sorry, um, and also the financial center that it is. But, something like, for example, the COVID vaccine, and then like the LGI and the university and the health complex within Leeds, and
Yeah,
obviously St James's has always been a massive
yeah,
teaching hospital, and it's yeah, and the more that you look into it, well, I mean, it's like anything, isn't it? The more that you look into it, the more you fall down the rabbit hole of like, oh, this is really fascinating, and all these things going on. So yeah, I mean, I still have a love-hate relationship with the city because
yeah.
you always have to.
Mhm.
But Yeah, it's fascinating. And Leeds and Bradford, it's a very porous thing, isn't it? It's like they will one day they're going to end up just being one big city. I think we need to do like a Randstand in Holland and have like Manchester,
Yeah,
Leeds, Sheffield, like all of us super connected, and then
yeah,
we can just forget London and the
yeah,
south. And
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're so central as well. Like, why isn't it the capital? Which it probably should be.
I think it will be when London goes into the sea. I think that's the plan.
Yeah, yeah, probably. Yeah, the backup plan. Yeah,
Yeah, but I think some things are kind of moving up here. Of yeah, this might be the next
yeah.
capital.
Well, I think you saw that with Channel 4. Like, they moved out of London and went, where should we go? And we as an agency got together with all the other agencies in Leeds to do All in Leeds, which was like an open letter to Channel 4 going, we think it'd be great for the city for you to come here. So
Mm,
yeah, you're seeing larger and larger organisations kind of move out of London now and like move further afield and stuff, move further north.
mm,
So interesting stuff, but good for the city, good for the economy.
mm.
Yeah,
I think the other thing that I haven't really talked about in terms of what I want this show to do. Obviously, I want to have conversations about climate, and there aren't places to do that. I want to talk about things like UBI, and like a
yeah,
lot of people don't know about it. So it ticks those boxes, but also it's the reflection on work. And you hear so much and all these like we want to change this and we want to do this kind of podcasts, and it's always talking to some expert on some area who's talking about workers rather than talking to people working.
yeah,
It's like, talk to the people, don't talk about us, talk to us.
yeah,
And that's what I want to do, and I want people to reflect on their job and see how, like with those questions, how does something like Brexit affect your work? Because your opinion that you have personally about Brexit and then how it actually impacts your work, they're not always going to be the same thing.
yeah, yeah.
And, it's nice to have that pointed out sometimes, I
Yeah, it is.
think.
It is absolutely. If you do want some like sustainability or climate change related workshops, talks, I do know of some in Leeds actually.
Mm.
So you should go along to those.
Yeah, I need to start getting out of the house more.
Yeah,
Become too
don't we all?
housebound.
Don't we all? Yeah.
Yeah. Socials, I guess. So where do people find you? Where do people get in touch? And anything else that you want to pitch to the audience?
Yeah, sure. So you can find myself and my team at fewandfar.co.uk. That's the agency that I run in Leeds to help charities. We have a free charity hub on there with resources, guides, bespoke tools that will help your charity with your digital. We also have a free service called the Impact Optimizer, which is a free website audit. We do one every week and have done that for 2.5 years, so we've done quite a lot. It's
Mm.
free to any and all. You can be a one-man charity. You can be a multinational charity. It really doesn't matter if you need the support. It's there for you. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Colin Grist, Grist. And I'd say Twitter, but I'm on Threads now. I'm trying to make Threads a real my social home. So you can find me on Threads at Colin Grist as well.
Thank you again to Colin for being my guest. Thanks, as always, to all my guests. And thanks to you, Leeds, for being my subject. You can find Few and Far at www.fewandfar.co.uk. And you can find Thomas's interview on Series 4, Episode 19 of the Working Hours podcast. I have put the link to that episode in the show notes. If you'd like to contact me about working hours or any of my guests or their interviews or what the hell I'm on about at any particular moment or anything at all working hours related, even about being a guest, yes, you can do that if you're a lawyer. Then you can email me about the show at workinghourspod@western-studios.com. If you would like to buy Working Hours episodes outside of the main project, either as gift episodes for yourself or for others, you can do that, and you don't need to be based in Leeds for that. If you've been a guest already and you want to buy additional clips or content from your Working Hours episode or interview, then I'm obviously happy to let you do that. If you want to license Working Hours for anything, or if you really want some Working Hours merch, let me know. If you're an individual, a business, or an organisation based in West Yorkshire and you would like to sponsor or advertise on Working Hours, get in touch. It will be ridiculously cheap. If you want to contribute financially to Working Hours, you can make a donation of any amount or buy a membership subscription to support regularly. There's plenty of ways to do that, but the easiest way is via Ko-fi. That's ko-fi.com/working hours. If you would like to make a version of Working Hours for yourself about your own city, then also get in touch to discuss that and how we might boost each other's projects. If you are a business, an individual, or an organisation that is ready to take that next step and make your own podcast or audio content for your own audiences, then you can do that and support Working Hours by buying podcast services from me at Western Studios Leeds Limited. I've made podcasts for businesses, organisations and individuals, as well as the over 140 episodes of Working Hours, and I can give your show as much hands-on or hands-off support as you need. I can only take on so many shows though, so speak to me sooner rather than later about your show needs if you would like to work with me. To make your West Yorkshire podcast, email makemypodcast @western-studios.com. Website and social links for Western Studios Leeds are in the credits. Commissions from outside of West Yorkshire will be considered, but it will cost a little more, just a smidge. Okay, that's me. Remember, listener, no matter what you do, it's impossible for you to understand anything that your salary depends on you not understanding. So work for peace and plan with kindness. Raise your voice and reduce your impact. Be big with your space and big with your dreams. Cheers, ears. Take care out there and be kind to each other, Leeds. Working Hours is produced, recorded, edited and published by Simon Treen for Western Studios Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes, which is in the public domain and was taken from museopen.org. Go to western-studios.com and use the contact page on the site to drop me a message about either Working Hours or about your own Leeds podcast project. Keep up to date with Working Hours and find out about the other great Leeds podcasts that Western Studios is involved with by following Western Studios Leeds on Facebook at facebook.com/western_studios_Leeds and on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/company/western-studios. Western Studios Leeds is available to loaners to help them realise their own podcast projects for only £30 for an hour of audio podcast work or £40 for an hour of video podcast work. Email makemypodcast @western-studios.com with details of your project and what support you want to get your Leeds podcast made. Whatever your podcast question or need, get in touch with Western Studios Leeds. Do we want to have any fancy sign off or anything else that I want to say? I wish I could remember that bloody thing.
You'll remember it as soon as you click off.
I was I've ummed and ahed.
What were we chatting about at the time? We were chatting about
it was at the end of UBI and it was something around UBI.
Yeah.
It was probably some nonsense anyway.
Well, I was saying about how it had probably, some charities probably wouldn't exist if we had UBI. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Can't help you, mate.
It'd be interesting to see how they, how that would affect giving. If giving would just dry up entirely because people are like, oh,
I know.
What do you need?
Yeah, yeah. God, yeah, I've not even thought about that. It would, though, wouldn't it? It would be like, well, I get money and you get money. Why do you need money?
Yeah.
Whereas at the moment, that's why people give, right? Like they're poor or they don't have money or they don't have the resource or they don't have the support or whatever. But if we all had it, it'd be like, well, you don't get out of me. Might make people more selfish, really. It's dead interesting. It's dead interesting. Are there any countries that do it?
No, it's all pilots. It's all like pilot here, pilot there. I don't think any. I think there's some places that are close to it, or there are some places that are kind of offering partial ones. Like where they're offering like a basic income, but it's not universal. So it's very experimental, but
It's an
yeah.
interesting theory, isn't it?
Well, this is the thing. We've so many like real challenges that we have to deal with that the political theatre is just not even discussing, talking about, touching upon. Like you can't get them to be serious for a second. Like
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like can we is there somebody that looks after you people that we
Yeah.
can talk to?
Yeah. It kind of goes back to when you were mentioning about us all working, the grind, the Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, whatever, 40 hours a week.
Mm.
I think, especially in my industry, I'm seeing a lot of agencies start experimenting with the 4-day working week model,
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah.
or the 9-day fortnight or something. There's many different things,
Mm.
and I'm in an agency group with all of the agency owners in Leeds, and a lot of them are asking each other about like, what are you doing, or we're thinking about this, and I think we're all aware that like work life balance is massively important, and I think that we're a big
Hmm.
learning out of COVID that um, yeah, I do want to spend more time at home or with my kids or with my family or just going outside. I don't want to just do the grind.
Mm.
And so a few, they're experimenting at the moment. I think some the review the kind of reviews are mixed on it as well. Like it's worked really well for us. Productivity's up. People are more happy. Other
Hmm.
people have said it's kind of affected them negatively. Clients, deliverables. It started
Mm.
out positive, but then people went back to old ways. So it's really interesting to read about that stuff, and it kind of works hand in hand with what we were talking about with the universal stuff. But um, it's something we're definitely interested in. Because I don't want my team to have to work Monday to Friday. Really, if I don't want to do it myself, like why am I
Yeah.
expecting them to do it?
Yeah.
And I think as you see more like startups and younger agencies come about, that'll be the same. That'll be the case for them as well. They want to,
Hmm.
um, you know, work remotely or work flexible, be in the office a couple of days, be at home a couple of days, and maybe not work all 5 days a week as well. So I
Hmm.
think that's definitely something we're going to look into. But it's interesting to see how people are experimenting with that, and there isn't really a definitive yes, it's great or no, it's terrible at the moment. So. And everyone's different, right? I don't know how you'd
Mm.
do a 4-day working week when you have 100 members of the team. And
Mm.
are they all off the same day? Are they all off different days? How do you manage the rota, the schedule?
Mm.
So there's many things to think about, but it's a really interesting concept that I'm keen to kind of pursue and figure out how we could do it to the best. So
Mm. I'll do a plug here because if you haven't listened to it, listen to Laura Davis's episode or scan through. But she talks about they moved a brilliant agency to a 4-day week. I
perfect.
can't remember exactly how they've done it, but I think what they've done is like I think it's like over the Friday and Monday you've got some flexibility, so you can either take like half day Friday, come in late on Monday sort of thing. But
Yeah,
they've made it so you can have that flexibility over the weekend
yeah,
and
that's
you
great.
kind of have some choice in it, and then it's worked really well for them. But they came to that as a team,
Yes,
so it was very much like it wasn't imposed. It was like, what works? What do we want
yeah,
to do?
yeah. I think telling the staff that this is it isn't gonna work with this because it's such a different way of. It's not the way anyone's ever used to working, right? We're all
Mm,
so it's all ingrained in us about you go to work Monday to Friday and you work 9 to 5 or you work the weekends as well. And I
mm,
think changing it, it's you have to have the team involved in like does it is it actually worse for you doing this? Like because if it is,
yeah.
that's something to think about as well. But one thing we did see was a 9 day. I think it's called 9 day fortnight, and basically it's you
Mm,
work 1 week full week, the next week you have the day off,
yeah.
and it can be a Monday or a Friday, and I think that could be quite neat.
Mm,
Great for the staff, great for morale. It's great like company perk as well, and all that kind of stuff.
mm,
So um, yeah, definitely something I want to look more into.
mm, yeah. Cool. Well, I look forward to seeing what
What we
comes
do,
out of all of that. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I mean, you're probably going to be a big influence on like how the charity sector in the city works. So your decisions could have
yeah.
wider implications.
Potentially, yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of the people we work with, in these charities, they're like part time as well. They don't even
Mm,
work full time. A lot of them, they're trying to, they're trying to help. the marketing of a massive charity, but they only work Monday, Tuesday. You know, it's stuff like
Well,
that.
and it's the lifestyle of those kind of jobs as well, and a lot of that, like a lot of the slack, a lot of that is feminized labor, and a lot of it is women who, like, they have other responsibilities. They can do a few hours,
Yeah,
and they want to work on something that makes a difference, and
yeah,
like
absolutely.
all these different circumstances that people
Yeah,
are in for that, because you quite often you're not going to get a full-time job where you get paid full time. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to press stop finally.
Cool.
Thank you very much for doing this. It's been
No worries,
great to
mate.
chat to
It's
you
been
this
great.
morning.
Yeah, it has,
Yeah.
mate. Yeah.